Hi, I'm Pete Berg, and these are 5 of my favorite action sequences of all time. Billie Jack was the first time I ever remember seeing action or fighting in a movie, and it was Tom Laughlin, who played Billie Jack, talking about how Wendy and all the kids at the camp try and tell him to control his temper, and he really tries, but when he sees people humiliated, he just goes berserk. And Billie Jack just put a whoop ass on a group of bad guys, and that was the first fight I ever remember seeing in a movie. Officer and a Gentleman was definitely one of the films that made me want to get in the business. I remember the day after it came out, I shaved my head, so I wanted to look like Richard Gere in Officer and a Gentleman. If you look at that film, I think it's really almost a perfect script, and for me, a perfect film. But there were 2 action sequences. The first is when Richard Gere and Deborah Winger and their friends are being chased out of a honky-tonk blues bar by some rednecks, and Richard Gere doesn't want to fight, but these guys keep pushing it, and he really tries to get out of the fight, and they push it, and he does like a taekwondo back kick and just breaks this guy's nose. And it was the first time I'd seen that kind of taekwondo in a real serious film other than Billie Jack, and I was kind of blown away. And then that's the precursor for the big fight, which is the fight between Richard Gere and Lou Gossett Jr., which was just like a brutal fight physically, and there was so much emotion. These 2 men had such complex relationship and this kind of real love-hate, respect-disrespect kind of mutual admiration, but a lot of emotional connection between the 2, and they just had this, for me, what was then probably the most brutal fight I'd ever seen in a movie. So that's an awesome movie and a great fight scene. What Michael did in that film, I don't think anyone had ever done. The pacing, the sound design, the attention to detail, the fact that it was done in broad daylight with empathetic bad guys and empathetic cops, De Niro and his team versus Pacino and his squad, was just unprecedented, and really I think is the gold standard for any gunfight. My admiration for Steven Spielberg is endless, and to think that the guy from E.T. staged and choreographed and filmed and edited the assault on Normandy Beach at the beginning of Saving Private Ryan is kind of jaw-dropping for me. The detail, again, some of the shots, I remember a moment where 2 soldiers were communicating and they're trying to hear each other, and just when you think sort of mid-conversation, one of the soldiers just gets shot in the head and killed, and that kind of ruthless, indiscriminate violence that is what I would imagine that real kind of combat to be. There's a random shot of a soldier holding his arm that these images stuck with me. And my father, who served in the military in Korea, and many other veterans who I've spoken to, have always pointed to that film, and particularly the opening scene, the DDay Invasion, as one of the most chilling, intense, and realistic combat sequences ever filmed. The steam room, the Russian steam bath scene with Viggo Mortensen, where he's naked and he fights 2 Russian assassins, I still feel is just one of the most brutal, animalistic, carnal fight scenes I've ever seen. My hat is tipped to Viggo for doing that butt-ass naked with all his pride and glory flying around in the middle of the fight. But it was raw, and you could really feel it. I always think if you walk away from a film and you look back a couple of years later and there's 3 or 4 scenes that really are still with you, that's a success. And that scene stayed with me in terms of just the sheer audacity of that sequence and the power of that violence. I think it's probably one of the best hand-to-hand combat scenes I've ever seen.